All right, so I wanted to start today with the bottom line just in case you have to leave early because you finally realize that we are talking about marriage, okay? So listen, here's the bottom line of today. Are you ready? If you want to take a note, here, you ready? Nothing. My great advice for you today is nothing. We have an opportunity to talk about marriage for a series. And here's the thing, the ladies in the room are going, finally, there's a marriage series, honey. I'm so excited. And the men are going, I was just starting to like him. Ladies, here's the thing. Men think of marriage kind of like they think of a car. They don't want to work on it. They just want it to work, right? And ladies, when you say, let's talk about our relationship, men hear you say this to them. There's something wrong with me that you think you can fix. And I don't know about you, but I remember when I was a kid, when my parents took the dog to the vet to get fixed, that didn't end well. So when you say, let's talk about the relationship, it's like, when you're driving down the road, and this happens with us all the time. We're driving down the road, and, the roads around here sometimes are a little bumpy, right? You're driving, and you hear the rattle. And the rattle just continues, right? And then you start checking, you start pushing things, and you start looking around. You're like, where is that coming from? And you're going, okay, we're gonna have to find this. Any guys here with me going, you know what? That's exactly what's going on. And then you're kind of like, okay, hold on, we're gonna have to figure this thing out. Let's pull off to the side of the road. Okay, now you're gonna get in, you're gonna drive, and I'm going to find this rattle. And so you're climbing all through the car, trying to find out where this rattle is. And your wife is just going, turn the radio up. Just ignore it. But it's like this. Maybe you're a guy that likes to make sure that everything's okay with the car. So you're out in the driveway and you have the hood open. And your wife looks out and says, hey, is there something wrong with the car? You're like, no. Just checking, just looking. And she goes, well, as long as it's not broken down on the side of the road, do we really need to check it? To which he says, aha, gotcha. If it's not broke, don't fix it, right? So here we are walking into 4 weeks of marriage, and today's really just an introduction, and it's a kind of a step back of just how we're going to lay out the series. And it just has 2 little verses that go with it. 2 little verses. But I'll guarantee you this. If you are married in this room, you would wish that you had heard what we're going to talk about earlier. And if you're single in the room, you're going to be glad that you know what we're talking about today. Because here's the way I figure it. All of us in our life, we walk around and we're either carrying what some people describe as baggage or what some people call a box, okay? And so we carry around these things with us, and sometimes we don't even know that we're carrying them. And if you're married, you've kind of really started to understand what your things in your box are. If you're single, you're like, I'm not sure that I really know what the things in my box are, but that box is filled with things that are called your hopes, your dreams, and your desires. Your hopes for the future, your hopes for your career, your hopes for who it is that you're going to be with, those dreams that you have, how things are going to work out, the desires that are at the core of who you are. Everybody has this box. If you're single, you're kind of working that thing out. You're trying to understand exactly what do I hope for in life? What are my dreams? What do I desire most? If you're dating, you start figuring it out just a little bit more. I know that I don't want that. If you're engaged, you're saying, you know what, I kind of like what's going on here. I think my hopes, my dreams, and my desires will be fulfilled in this person. And if you're married, here's what happened. You took this box that was filled with all of your hopes, your dreams, and your desires, and you carried it with you up to the altar. And you held it there. Now, some of the things that we fill our box with are things that everyone needs to think about. We need to think about our finances. We need to think about how we're going to deal with money. Are we going to have one account? Are we going to have two accounts? Are we going to have an offshore account? I mean, what is it that we're going to do? Are we going to budget? Are we going to be people that live by a budget, which some people call an allowance? Or are we going to do something else with our money? Are we going to say laissez-faire? It doesn't matter as long as there's a check, I have some money. Are we going to live in a house? Are we going to look for that home that's just perfect, the one that has the white picket fence, the one that has the right number of rooms and it has the right setup? And are we going to finally trade in that sports car for something sensible? Are we going to have children? Are we going to have a baby? Are we going to have babies? Are we going to have, if we have a girl, are we going to keep trying until we have a boy? I mean, what are the things that we're going to do? We all pile these things into our boxes. And then we think, also we have this idea that we are melding two people together. And so we have this place where we have to figure out, what are our schedules going to be like? What's a reasonable time to be home from work? Is it 5 o'clock? Is it 7:30? Is it whenever you just show up? Is it good to be at home? And what about free time? When we put stuff in our free time and we pile those expectations in there, are we saying that every waking moment that we're not working, we're together? Or are we saying, hey, listen, I think you're great and all, but I need my space. I need to hang out with my friends. I need to, not be all tied down. And then you get to this place where you're piling things in the box and you get to the calendar. Anybody remember the holiday talk? Whose home do we spend the holidays at? Now, you may have a generous spouse that said, listen, all that I want are 3 holidays, and you can have every one of the other ones. All I want is Easter, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. That's it. You can have Halloween. You can have Independence Day. You can even have Groundhog Day. I mean, how generous, right? What do we do? How do we work out all of these things, all of this stuff regarding how to mesh these things together? And what about conflict resolution? Because inevitably you're going to get in a disagreement, so is yelling okay? Or do you have to be quiet? Is it okay to get everything out on the table, good, bad, ugly, indifferent? Or do we just stuff it inside? And we're piling these things in the box. We even put things like, how do we respond to, how do we act towards, how do we behave toward one another? And then we start bringing out these statements. If you really love me, you will do this. If you really care about me, she will always do these things. So many things in our world and in our lives impact what we place in our hopes, in our dreams, in our desires box. We put things in there like what we've seen and what we've heard. What we've watched other couples do, because all of us have these couples that we're like, you know what? I know that we're not that great, but man, we're better than them, right? And if you don't, never mind. Okay. Couples, you have these couples that you're like, man, they just know how to love one another. They are such a great example, a good, godly example. Oh, but then somebody recommends a book, right? Somebody recommends the great book on relationships. And it is the end-all book on relationships. And we have all of these things piling in to this box of our hopes, our dreams, and our desires. Then you add in romance movies, right? Any man fall into the tragedy of a romance movie? Why don't you look at me that way? So we add all of these things, and then we say, my experiences matter in this box too. In those hopes and dreams and desires are the reactions that you have to the home that you grew up in. If it was a great home, a great marriage, my parents were great. They loved one another. They somehow just made it work, even with the craziness of us kids. And so we're like, I want a relationship like my parents. Or you say, that was a hot mess. I don't want anything like that. And so we put these experiences in the box. And all of us have something in our lives, in our relationships, that we're trying to recreate. We're trying to either recreate something that we've experienced, something that we enjoyed, or we're trying to create something that is completely the opposite. And when we do that, it turns into a box that's filled with my hopes, my dreams, and my desires. And we carry this box that's filled with everything that we want in them. And we take that box from the altar and say, this is my box full of my hopes, my dreams, my desires. We take it and we turn it around only to see it labeled as expectations. My hopes, my dreams, my desires equal an expectation for my spouse. At some point, we hand it all off to the other. And they say, this doesn't feel like a whole lot of hopes, dreams, and desires. This feels like a whole lot of pressure. It feels like a whole lot of, I don't want that, right? An expectation is a strong belief that something will happen or will be the case in the future. And so here we are, we're attempting to recreate or avoid something from our past that we've placed in our hopes and our dreams, desires box, and it eventually turns into, as we offer it over to someone else, an expectation. And when that happens, listen, guys, even the best fall down sometimes. Even the wrong words seem to rhyme. Out of the doubt that fills my mind, I somehow find you and I collide. See what I did there? Actually, what happens is the eyes collide. I collide. We swap the boxes. Here's my hopes, dreams, desires. Take them. Oh, here's mine, right? And we put the pressure on to one another, and it comes in the form of expectation. And when that happens, when those things happen in a relationship, we respond in one of 5 ways. We're going to cover 4 of them today. The first thing that we do is we leave. We leave. We say, you know what? These expectations that you put on me, this hope, this dream, this desire that you had that coming into this relationship, if I would have known that were the case, I would have been out well before we started this thing. Because it's not what I thought it would be. And so we take our box. We take our box of I with us. Our hopes, our dreams, and our desires. And we walk out the door. So the first response that we have is that we leave. Or the next possible response is that we win. We overpower. We outsmart. We wear them down. We use what's called the 4 C's of an unfulfilling relationship. We convince, we convict, we control, and we coerce. We say, listen, here's what's going on here. These are some really good hopes, dreams, and desires. In fact, they are so good, I can't imagine that you would want to choose anyone else. And listen, if your hopes and your dreams or desires are anything like your family, well, we know how that goes. So why don't let's just do something that's really nice, really simple, really easy. You take my hopes, my dreams, and my desires, and you take them on as your own. You carry my box for me, but I'm not going to carry yours. In other words, somebody wins. The third way that we react is this way. We conform. Now, somebody wins, so that means that somebody has to conform. Somebody becomes someone that they're not to compensate for someone who doesn't accept them as they are. And that works for a while. Sometimes it works for a very, very long while. But ultimately, at the end, there's absolutely no respect. The fourth way we respond is we compromise. We compromise. And that means in a relationship, if we're compromising, that means that I give something and you give something. And nobody gets really what they want. I'll do my part if you do yours. In fact, I'm going to keep a tally sheet. I'm going to mark down every time that you do something that you're supposed to do, and I'll mark down every time that I do something that I think I'm supposed to do. It turns a relationship into a scorecard, scorekeeping scenario where it feels more contractual. If party A does as party B desires for them to do, while party B is receiving what said party A will do on the first part, you see what works here? But here's the thing, when we live in a relationship that is contractual, that it's this for that, A plus B, if you do what I want you to do, will I respond in like kind? You create a relationship that has low trust and no intimacy. You create this relationship that is very low in trust for one another, and it lacks what all good relationships need in intimacy. And it's at this moment that guys say, I can only think of one thing that is needed for intimacy. And that's wrong. The best relationships are the relationships where they're high on trust, high on intimacy. That's way better than anything physical. This relationship of compromise may work, but ultimately this relationship is not fulfilling. And so we say something like this: I'm committed to my marriage. I'm committed to my marriage. Compromise is fueled by commitment to the relationships. Compromise is fueled by commitment to the marriage. Now, it sounds good, doesn't it? I'm committed to my marriage. It sounds good. But nobody marries a marriage. Nobody dates a relationship. There's another person. There's a name there. There's a name in the person that has a relationship with you. Compromise is all about you. Commitment to marriage, not to the person, that just equals tolerance. But we say, listen, I really want my marriage relationship to work. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing to want it to work. It's a good thing to want it to come together, but it's not the thing. Working as a lone eye in a marriage is not fulfilling. So when eyes collide, when my hopes, my dreams, my desires collide with her hopes, her dreams, her desires, when those eyes collide, I will either leave, I will win, I will conform, or I will compromise. Ultimately, when eyes collide, we lose. When everything is about me, we has no chance. But there's another option. There's another option. And we're going to talk about that next week. But for today, we're going to frame in just a little bit, a different way to help us to understand where we're heading. Because expectations create in a relationship a debt-debtor relationship. They create this place where somebody owes someone else something. So you owe me attention. You owe me to pay attention to me and put down your phone. You owe me affection. Listen, all I wanted was a hug. You owe me money. You owe me financial support. I don't want to worry about the bills. I don't want to worry about if they're being paid, how they're being paid, how often they're being paid. I want you to take care of me. We have this debt-debtor relationship where there is an expectation that needs to be paid. Listen, I expect you to take the kids to school. I expect for the house to be clean. I expect for patience when I'm upset. I expect for you to stay in shape. I expect for you to play with the kids. I expect for you to keep your towel off the floor. And it leads us to say, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to take care of the things I told you. You're supposed to take care of the things that I have asked you to take care of. Because that's what men and women, that's what husbands and wives are supposed to do. You're supposed to do things for each other. So let me ask you a question. How much gratitude do you express to people who pay you what they owe you? Not much. How much gratitude do you express to somebody that has just provided you a service that you have paid for? Not much. You express minimal gratitude. And when we have our relationships set up in such a way that they're a debt-debtor relationship, when the expectation is met, we express little gratitude. In fact, we rarely express gratitude for something that we expect. You're just doing what you're supposed to do. You owe me. I deserve what you just gave me. When they meet the expectations, there's very little margin for love. There's very little margins because they don't even get credit for meeting the expectation. And I think of it this way, that's really why when I pay my credit card bill, I don't receive the next few days a nice perfume-scented letter from them saying, I am so glad that you are in my life and that you took it upon yourself to pay me. I didn't even expect it. It was amazing. You don't get perfume-laced letters from your creditors. They expect you to pay your bill. That's what you're supposed to do. A debt-debtor relationship, it eliminates the possibility for you to express unconditional love for somebody else. I owe you eliminates I love you. If I owe you flowers on Valentine's Day and I provide you flowers, I didn't give you flowers, I paid you flowers. It becomes a transactional payment when one person sets it up so that someone else owes them, no matter what is given. It's never a gift. It's only a payment. And at the end of the day, when you get done with these debt-debtor relationships, all you are is even. You're never ahead. I owe you for a house to be clean. right? These are the things that we think about. If I owe you for the house to be clean, for you to maintain your fitness, for you to be on time, for us to have a vacation, for us to do something together, for the chores to get done. Do you know we have a mountain of laundry this high and the laundry doesn't do itself, right? And it ends up that you can't give them anything, you just pay them. And at the end of the day, everyone's even. Expectations remove the margin that's necessary for love to be recognized, for it to be appreciated. And this is why our expectations undermine intimacy. If you're in a debt-debtor relationship, you don't feel much like being intimate. Those debt-debtor relationships undermine, that expectation undermines intimacy and romance, and all it does is add pressure. Meeting an expectation just makes us even. If I can't get ahead, it means that I can't do anything extra. If I can never get ahead, I can never go above. I can't express more love to you. By the way, this is free. Your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your fiance, your spouse, in this relationship that you have with them, they're volunteers. They volunteered to be in a relationship with you. And they don't actually owe you anything. Because meeting expectations makes us even. I can't get ahead. Eventually, here's what happens as you get worn out. You say, I can never please you. It doesn't matter. I've tried and I've tried and I've tried. And some of us in this room, and if we are really honest, if we were just sitting across the table from one another, there will be couples in this room that said, listen, here's how I feel. I can never do anything to please him. I can never do anything to please her. Nothing I do is appreciated. You expect a clean house? I clean the house only for you to notice that one thing that isn't clean. And my act of love towards you is now not perceived as love. It's perceived as something that's not finished. Maybe you want him to spend time with the kids. And when he does spend time with the kids, it's not enough time. And that act of love, of spending time with the kids, is not perceived as love. So then what do? We all have these boxes of hopes and dreams and desires. What do we do with our boxes that are filled with everything that we thought life would be? With everything that we wanted in our life? What do we do with those boxes? Do we ignore them? Do we ignore our desire for the right kind of home? Do we ignore our desire for the right kind of finances? Do we ignore it and say, you know what, just what I wanted, it doesn't really matter? Do we deny it? Do we say, you know what, it's just, it's fine. It doesn't, it's no big deal, no big deal. Maybe Jesus will help me out in heaven or something, Do we feel guilty? What do we do with our box? What do we do with that expectation that we have built, these hopes, these dreams, these desires? What do we do with our box? The short answer on how is how you answer this question. What do they owe you? For real. You have a box filled with everything that you ever wanted. What do they owe you? See, great marriages, great relationships, they know the answer to this. And the answer is quite simply, nothing. They owe you nothing. We owe the other everything, but are owed nothing in return. That's the way that these things work. And this is something that comes right out of the pages of Scripture. We owe the other everything, but are owed nothing in return. Jesus, when he was doing his ministry, and he was interacting with people all around the Middle East. And he was walking and talking and interacting with all of these folks. And he had this guy along with him. His name was John. And John wrote down a few things for us. And John gave us the 2 commandments, right? The ones that love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself, right? That's when Jesus boiled down all the law into 2 statements. And then he said, hey, John, you got your pencil handy? I'm going to boil this down one more time for you. He took all the law in those 2 commands and took it down to 1. In great marriages, great relationships, they take their cue from what Jesus said. He said this, a new commandment I give you, that you love one another just as I have loved you. Just as I have loved you. We owe everything to our spouse, but they owe us nothing in return. Just as I have loved you, you are to love one another. The Apostle Paul, he picked up this statement and he kind of fleshed it out for us a little bit relationally. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 2, he said, walk in love as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us. Throughout Paul's teaching, we find ourselves being directed to do things just as Christ. When we apply just as Christ in our marriage, when we apply just as Christ in our relationships, when we take on this Christian principle, here's what happens. We stop looking for the things that we deserve, and we stop looking for others to pay what they owe. It's about getting what we don't deserve and doing for others what was done for us. If we take this into our relationships, it will change your life. If you cancel the debt-debtor relationship and say, I owe you everything and you owe me nothing. What it does is it takes marriage and it reduces it to simply a submission competition. It's a race to the very back of the line. It's a race to the very back of the line. It's a race to put somebody else ahead of you, their needs, their wants, their dreams, their desires, everything about them, everything. And I just want them to have everything that they need, everything that they'd hope for, everything. And they owe me nothing. It's a race to the back. It's how do I out-submit my spouse? Now, for some of you guys that are kind of like these linear thinkers, you're going, you can't out-submit each other because you'd never get anything done, right? Oh, no, you first. Oh, no, you first. No, you first, right? It's a race to ensure that the needs of the other are greater than yours. Now, for some of you say it sounds miserable. And I think it's in that moment, it sounds miserable that you will never get anything that you want. And that's why so few people try it. But here's the thing, those that do, man, they enjoy it. They absolutely enjoy the relationship that comes when they choose to out-submit one another. So what do we do? How do we do these things? I think really what I want to leave you with today is this. 2 questions. These are things to think about as you go along the way. The first one is this. what's in your box? If you were to unpack and pull out all of these things that are in your box, what's in there? Are these things realistic? Are they things that really do matter? Or are they just something that you thought that you might want if somebody would do it for you? If you're married, you need to unpack your box. Find out what's in there. If you're single, you need to probably figure out, one, where the box is, right? And two, what do you really want to put in it? Because I want to encourage you to not pack your box with things that disappoint you. Don't pack your box with things that say, me, only me first. If you can't practice being selfless as single, you will never practice selfless when you're married. Sorry, that was harsh. No, it wasn't. If you can't practice being selfless in your singleness, you will never be selfless in your relationships. And as you carry this box and you look and you say, you know what, there's a lot of great things in this box. Are you expecting someone else to carry it? Are you expecting them to fulfill all your hopes, your dreams, and your desires? That's where we're going to leave it today. And we'll pick it up next week. But for today, the greatest marriage advice I can give you is nothing.